My name's Douglas. I'm an accountant for a large tech company in Seattle. My climbing group consists of Lenny, a high school friend of mine, Brandon, a painter, and Kelly, a botanist that does research at the state university. It's a mountain in Washington state that my climbing group and I wanted to climb for a while. I won't say the mountain so you guys won't go to test my story, but if you figure it out, please don't do what we did. A bunch of us conveniently had our vacation time line up, and we were all itching to climb this mountain together. We usually go climbing at least twice a year. Recently, climbing Kilimanjaro was one of our biggest expeditions to date. We hadn't been able to climb together for a while, so we looked up if the mountain was open. It was closed for another 3 weeks, which was odd considering the weather was perfect. Light snowfall, dry switchbacks, and not too much wind at the peak. Since this mountain was so close to where we all lived, and we've never summited it together as a group, we decided to risk it. If we drove out and got turned around, it wouldn't be a big deal. We'd probably have dinner together at a local all-you-can-eat buffet or find a small peak to hike up. We all climbed this mountain before ourselves, so we were all very familiar with the terrain and trails. We were confident that we could do it safely on our own, so we got our gear together, pulled into Lenny's car, and drove up to the base of the mountain. A little over an hour later, we reached a steel gate, the kind that swings in and out over the road with spikes on the front to mess up any cars that try to drive through. The park's locked up. Guess we gotta turn around, Kelly said. I noticed that there was a chain around the swinging gate, but no lock. I told the group to wait for me. I hopped out of the car, ran over to the chain holding the gate closed, and removed the stick holding the chain in place and swung the gate open. Car rolled through, and I replaced the chain stick and hopped back in. Well, that's weird. Why wouldn't they lock it? Brandon said. We all shrugged, but we returned to our normal conversation, just pleased that we had made it through. For the next half hour, we drove up winding and washboarded roads, stopping to pee and take pictures here and there. We rounded the last corner before the parking lot. Lenny noticed it first. Guys, look! Someone's in the info booth. We all squinted to look through the dusty windshield, and we all made out the same picture. A park ranger, on the skinny side, was happily tapping a beat out on his clipboard and smiling at us. You know when you get caught walking through the halls at school by the teacher whose class you're skipping? You don't know what to say, as almost anything that leaves your mouth will just make the situation worse. Well, that's how we felt. Lenny, somewhat used to that feeling from high school nonetheless, spoke up when we reached the booth. Hey! He said cheerfully, to mask his worry. Hey guys, heading up the mountain today? The ranger asked. Lenny paused for a second. Yeah, as long as it isn't closed. We saw somewhere that it might be closed, is that true? If it's closed, I shouldn't be out here. The ranger laughed. They better pay me overtime if that's the case. The car faked a laugh. Our eyes darted nervously at each other. Was the mountain actually open? It seems pretty empty here. Where is everyone? Lenny asked, gesturing towards the absence of cars in the parking lot. Don't know. Quiet season, I guess. More mountain for us, he said, winking. Maybe go up myself today, if I get the chance. I just love the mountain. It's beautiful this time of year. Well, maybe we'll see you on the trail, Brandon yelled out from the back. I hope so, the ranger said. Let me take your names down. How long do you plan on staying? Just a day hike or overnight? Overnight. Snow camping, hopefully, I said. That's Kelly, Brandon in the back, Lenny driving, and me, Douglas. The ranger scribbled our info down on his clipboard and slammed it onto the table when he finished. Great. Be safe. Have fun. Enjoy the mountain. We nodded politely and drove into the parking spot. No one really said anything, but we were all thinking the same thing. Nothing about that conversation felt normal, or safe, or comfortable, and everything about it just felt off. I guess we were just happy that we didn't get kicked off the mountain. Lenny brought up the ranger about 10 minutes into our hike, but that conversation quickly died down. The first hour of the hike was normal. Sort of forgot about the weird parking lot encounter. About halfway up the switchback portion of the mountain, before the glacier-covered peaks, Kelly started feeling sick. We chalked it up to the altitude sickness, but found it weird that a seasoned climber like her would feel sick this low. We weren't high up at all. She insisted that we keep going. We made it this far already. Don't let me spoil your fun. We camped lower on the mountain than we had hoped to let Kelly rest. She was pretty pale and needed to take a few breaks, more frequently than usual. So we set up the camp right on the edge of the snow. Lenny stayed with Kelly while Brandon and I took our day packs and walked up the glacier to sightsee with our binoculars. From our elevated position, we could see most of the surrounding landscape, rolling hills at the foot of the mountain, raging glacier runoff, and a sea of trees that stretched beyond the horizon. Sadly, we didn't spot any wildlife, but we had a laugh making David Attenborough-esque jokes while observing Kelly and Lenny, moping around the camp. The wind died down just enough for Brandon and I to hear a strange clicking noise coming from behind us up the face of the mountain. It sounding similar to river rocks bouncing off of each other, but it had a strange tempo to it. I looked at the source of the sound and saw someone sort of thrashing around on a patch of exposed gravel and rocks, his movements sort of rhythmic but still erratic, like a robot copying dance moves. He slowly turned towards us, and once he was fully facing Brandon and I, we could see that he was the park ranger we saw earlier. Brandon and I watched in curiosity and horror as the park ranger jerked and twisted, kicking rocks and jumping up and down. He noticed us and stopped dancing immediately, and waved. He motioned for us to come up to meet him with a big smile on his face. Against every instinct, every gut feeling, Brandon and I could not help but join him on his patch of rocks. It was like we were on an escalator, the way our legs effortlessly carried us up the mountain. "Beautiful up here, isn't it?" Park ranger asked. He had his hands on his hips and his chest puffed out in sort of a exaggerated parody of a proud parent. "Oh, for sure," Brandon said. I could tell he was locked in the same sort of trance I was. I wanted to scream at him, run, yell down at the others to call for help, but I was frozen. "Yeah, I love it here. Beautiful this time of year," I heard myself say. It was like someone was using my mouth to speak. I had no control over it. The ranger took a deep breath, but it looked wrong the way he did it. His shoulders just sort of shrugged, and he arched his back unnaturally, like he was intimidating someone breathing. It didn't occur to me at the time, but I only ever saw him inhale when he spoke. His chest would just collapse, but no air would escape. I tried with everything I had in me to break up my legs and run, but it was as if I had stepped in concrete. I could barely wiggle, like I had 1 millimeter of space around my body to move. "Glad you guys could join me up here for a bit. I love company. Job gets lonely sometimes," he said. With his last sentence, he kicked a pebble down the mountain like a disappointed kid. We all stood in silence for what felt like 20 minutes before I squealed out the only sentence I could manage to say. Who are you?" Brandon's eyes shot towards mine as if I did something horribly wrong. If he looked scared before, now he looked horrified. "How about this weather? They should open the park earlier. Folks miss out on a good 3 weeks of clear skies," the ranger said. That did it. I broke free. I nearly tackled Brandon over, trying to drag his stiff body away from the ranger. We tumbled a few meters down the glacier in a tangled mess. "Going so soon? Stay here for a bit, taking the view," the ranger called out, cupping his hands in the front of his mouth, still unable to speak. I pulled as hard as I could against Brandon's locked-up frame. He too soon broke free and joined me in running haphazardly down the glacier in silence. The ranger didn't follow us. They kept inviting us back to his spot. I honestly don't remember what he was yelling, and with every step I took, it got harder and harder to breathe. A strange pressure was building up in my head, and my vision was slowly tunneling, and by the time we reached our camp, I was almost completely blind, save for a drinking straw-sized circle of vision. I barreled into the tent's nylon wall and screamed with everything I could at Lenny and Kelly. "We have to go now!" "What's going on?" Lenny yelled back from inside the tent. I tore the door open and saw Lenny bent over Kelly's pale and unconscious body. "She's in real bad shape." Started mumbling, then fell asleep. She's super cold, like dead cold. "What happened to you?" Lenny said. He looked us up and down, grimacing as if we'd been in a brutal car crash. "That ranger, he's here. Something's wrong. We just need to go." "And leave her?" Lenny said. "I feel like moving her would kill her. We need to call for help." I looked back at the patch of rocks, but the ranger wasn't there. I scanned the rest of the mountain face and found no trace of him. "Maybe we can get an airlift. Where's your satellite phone?" "My bag, in my tent," he said, pointing to the blue tent a bit higher up the mountain, pitched in a flat patch of gravel. I ran as fast as I could towards the door facing us. It was only until I got within 10 feet of it that I noticed a face, pressed hard against the door facing me from the inside of the tent. The ranger. Its open mouth and eyes were pressed hard against the nylon surface. I quietly unhooked my ice axe from my belt and I tiptoed towards the tent before swinging as hard as I could into its face. Felt like I hit a block of ice on the way. It just shattered and splintered all over the inside of the tent. A horrible, grotesque scream followed. It made my eyes water and my chest shake. It was so high-pitched I could feel my bones vibrate. Whatever was in the tent began savagely ripping at the walls, thrashing and kicking like a trapped animal. It was clawing at the door, trying to find the zipper. I ran, screaming for my friends to run and follow me. We left our tents, gear, and Kelly behind as we scrambled down the mountain as fast as possible. We spent more time tumbling down the face of the mountain than on our feet, but it didn't matter. We reached the parking lot, covered in deep gouges from falling on the rocks and roots, and Lenny started the car, slammed on the accelerator. We took corners at impossibly fast speeds, slamming into the jagged sides of the mountain carved away to make the road. We even crashed through the gate at the bottom of the hill, which ruined our radiator, sprayed hot coolant all over the inside of the car. We drove into town, our car scratched and smoking, and pulled into a parking lot where we threw up and cried. We woke up in the hospital. We told the police we lost control on a back road and that Kelly was with us the whole time. The police searched the mountain and they found nothing. No gear, no tents, no Kelly. Just footprints all over the surface of the glacier. Despite all of this, the park and mountain opened up 3 weeks later, on schedule without issue. I stopped reading updates about the mountain staff when I learned that a new employee named Kelly joined as the newest member of the park rangers that year. Said she was a botanist. She studied the flora of the park. Blaney and I never spoke to each other after we left the hospital. And last I heard of Brandon, he quit his job. He moved back with his parents in Florida. I still work for the same company. Been almost a year since this happened. I have time off coming up again. I feel drawn to that mountain still. It's not open for a couple more weeks. I know it's not locked. I know I'll be allowed in. Anyways, I have a conversation to finish with that particular ranger. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and once again, it's the end of tonight's video, so I want to tell you all thank you for listening or watching however you hear my voice. Whether it be on YouTube or on the podcast, thank you so much for being here with me. There's going to be a new story every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday night right here on YouTube, or if you're not watching on YouTube, that means the podcast gets updated on SoundCloud, Apple, Google Play, and now the podcast is on Spotify. So if it's easier for you guys to listen there than it is to listen on YouTube, then hey, not such a bad deal, right? As always, any support you guys give towards MrCreepyPasta Storytime really does help me out. I can actually keep the lights on in the house, and I can get nice little cat treats for Hercules. Okay, sorry for taking up so much of your time. Thank you guys for listening once again, and sweet dreams.